that look to the oil first before any country. And this discovery has also consequences in our economy, on our style of living, and also it reflects to different fields and sectors. One of the main sectors is definitely is energy. You cannot actually develop without energy, without power energy. So that's discovery, and to have an economy based on oil led us to have an intense power station based on oil and gas. So briefly here we have the power generation we have in Bahrain. We have Sitra, Rafah, Hit. Sitra and Rafah are actually owned by Electricity and Authority, and it has open combined cycle GT, gas turbines and steam turbines in Sitra. And we have Hid, Ad-Dur, Al-Izl. Both of them are owned by the private companies. These companies have a long-term contract with the government, and most of them are international companies. If you can see the installed capacity here, you will find the majority of electricity and water are coming actually from the private sector. We have Alba, which is aluminum company. They have their own grid, and there is an exchange between Alba and National Grid, which is 300 megawatts. And one very important backbone for our national electrical grid is the GCC grid. The GCC grid, we have also two 20 kV cables connected, which the installed capacity is 600 megawatts, and there are several projects now to increase the number of cables, so you have more connectivity with the GCC country, so we can take benefits of our neighbor in the regions, especially that they have also different type of technology. So if you can see here, the generation mostly based on oil and gas. The valid question here, okay, we are talking about sustainability, renewable energy. What's the government plan? A significant milestone was achieved in January 2017 when the Sustainable Authority Unit at that time, now they changed the name to be the Sustainable Energy Authority, announced the National Renewable Energy Action Plan. The action plan has two targets, and it's announced targets. That first, in the action plan, if you go to the Renewable Energy Action Plan, you will find a brief discussion about different type of renewable energy, but they clearly identify the type of technology what suits the country to, and also which advise the private sector to invest in. The first, it's wind. The second is solar by different technologies, PV, concentrated solar power, and biogas, which is these sometimes call it a waste to energy, but biogas is something more specific than waste to the energy technology. So the target is in 2025, we will have 5% of our energy mix from renewable energy, from these resources. So 5% in 2025, and in 2035, you will find it is 10%. It's also good here to observe that this action plan is in 2017. So it's actually after the Paris agreements of climate change. So this is also something we can sense that Bahrain is committed to Paris agreement, because it's one of the first countries this involved in Paris agreement for climate change. So it's one of the consequences of these agreements, international commitments, and also it reflects the need of the cabinet at that time to diversify the power generation. Let's talk about the details, and also here the details of the potential of renewable energy in Bahrain. Solar energy, we know Bahrain is in Middle East. The average solar radiation is quite high, is around 2,600 kilowatt hour per meter square per year. So it is more specific. It's very high, which open the opportunities for the investors and also the government to invest in this side. We have wind energy. The wind energy is based on the speed of the wind. The annual mean wind speed found 4.6 at height 10 meters, and it's actually in 2018 the Sustainable Energy Authority also launched the Wind Atlas, which shows that there are several places in Bahrain which is feasible for the investment of wind. But in wind technology, we just not consider just the wind itself. We have to see the distribution of the wind. So we have something we call it wave distribution. So we know how frequent the wind energy is available in specific locations. Biogas in 2016, just we talk about the waste to energy. In 2016, 1.6 million person in Bahrain generated around 1.8 million tons of overall streams. So it's very high generation of waste, if we can say it like that. Here we can see we can see here in the graph that it's the increment of the waste per year. So it is around 6.7 yearly. So imagine how the amount of the waste it's actually produced every year. And until now, there are not a serious attempt to invest this type of energy of waste to produce electricity. For the comparison here, I did this comparison. So if we have kilowatt hour per meter square, if we would like to compare between every renewable technology, we have to have a same units. So what I did here, we have the PV, which is what we can generate. I'm not talking about the availability of it. I'm talking about the generation per meter square, 2,160. And for the concentrated solar power is 2,050. And for the wind turbine, overall it's 910. And you can see here for biogas, so you have available very high potential for the biogas in Bahrain. Let's also focus about the National Renewable Energy Action Plan. In this action plan, they propose three policies. Would like to consider it as soon as possible. The first policy is decentralized urban generation. So it is more related to the customer side. So every customer can install PV or whatever type of technology, and then by investing in that, he can generate electricity for himself and also then generate it to the national grid. So this is policy, and it's actually start by impose the regulation for the smart metering, and now it's available and it's legal in Bahrain to install the solar panels to your house, and then you can connect it to the grid, and you can take advantage of the net metering policy. The second policy is large scale generation. So it's actually to invest in large scale generation on available land, and the range is to hand 50 to 100 megawatts. And now we have a project for the solar PV for 100 megawatt, and it's finished now. It's finished now the tender documents and all the things, and I think it's awarded for a company, a national company with cooperation with an international company. And we have this offshore generation, which is not implemented until now, and we didn't hear any any work in this policy until now. We hope we see in the future. So if we talk about the action plan, we can see that it's all about the generation. So before I consider talking about the generation, I would like just to give a brief idea about electrical grid. The conventional electrical grid is based on generation, and then is a transmission, and then is distribution, and then the customer. You can see here, the generation in Bahrain is based on gas. The transmission network is owned by the government. The distribution network also is owned by the government. We have in the generation, we have private companies, and we have governmental entities as well. So if you see here, this is the grid and how it's actually connected. And every part of the grid is essential for different applications. Our talk today will be about generation and some application in customer side. But we are not talking about transmission. Transmission is very high-tech field, and it's required several introductions. And personally, I worked for 10 years in transmission, and it's also good to consider it for further applications, especially for master or PhD students. But let's talk about the generation because it's more associated with our talk today. Every operators of electrical grid need to have a smart and reliable grid. You don't want to have a very weak grid. You need to have very reliable grid because you need to manage the generation and consumptions as well. So you don't have to have any failures or interrupting of the flow of the power. And especially now with the technology, there are a lot of talk about digitalization and smart grids. So now electricity is coming to our homes. It's not just electricity. So you have also a flow of information with it. It's about from generation through distribution and through distribution. So these grids now, it's based on advanced sensors, communication technology. There are so many complicated devices in it. So this is when we are talking about conventional, which is you have just a regular generation. But when we are talking about renewable energy, the things becomes different. There are several challenges with renewable energy. Renewable energy, it has a technical and also a social challenges you need to consider it. And our talk today will focus about renewable energy and how we can solve the sustainability issue of it. So let's go to talk about the wind power challenges. So you can see here in this study, the wind generation. You can see wind generation here. So you have the wind generation in Denmark, in western side in 2020. You can find that the wind generation is based on the wind availability of the location. So the wind share in Denmark is 50% of annual electricity demand. So it's covered 50%. You can see here the demand. The supply here is not covering the demand. So we have to have another source of supply, or either we have to provide a storage to compensate the consumptions of or the demand of the consumers. The problem here with the consumers that you cannot expect their behavior. I mean, you cannot say, for example, my behavior or my demand now it will be this amount, especially talking about a huge number of consumers. So with the wind technology, we cannot expect the demand. So in some occasions, we cannot cover it. For example, here you can see the supply, the demand is higher than the supply. In some occasions, you have more supply here. But in both cases, you have to solve this difficulty. The second difficulty, it comes also with the PV. For example, you cannot have a solar power at night, but you have here more than what you need in the afternoon. You can see here in this study, it's also in Bahrain to see that the demand for a household here. You can see in some occasions you have in most occasions actually the demand is not covered, but you have just in the morning time when you can cover the demand and you have more. So renewable energy add more complications to the whole process. And this complication, it could be solved in both way, even by the technical way. So you have another source of supply, or you provide storage, or you start to talk about the smart management of the grid, or what they call smart charging. So you use a lot of electricity, what you need during the availability of renewable energy. So for example, the operator can advise you it will be the cheaper for you to for example to charge your iPhones, to charge your car, to charge all electrical device where you have more available PV generation. And this actually will change the customer habits. So as I said, renewable energy, it's technical challenges and also social challenges. So people have to adapt with this technology. So according to Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at United States Department of Energy, the main challenges in renewable energy are lack of supporting policy. So we have to think about the supporting policy. For example, the tariff, it will be cheaper at that time when the wind is available or the solar is available. And the second challenge is high capital expenditure. So we are talking about high capital expenditure costs of actually manufacturing these power plants, of maintain them, and also it's required a lot of technical expertise and poor of social awareness of the benefits from renewable energy. And this is one of the things that we have here to highlight, that this course start to shed a light about how important renewable energy and how it has to be implemented. And sometimes you think it's renewable energy is the solution of everything. It's not correct. You have to consider it. You have to tackle this problem and to look of all dimension to solve it in very optimum way. And as we are all engineers, we like to solve the things in very optimum ways. So as I said before, demand-driven supply. So when you have a demand, you have nuclear power plants, you have gas turbines. So when you have a demand, you just ask the power plant to generate more, to just burn the gas and produce the electricity. Now the supply is driven by the demand. So what I mean by that is that the demand could be adjusted to meet the supply. We can advise, we can implement more policies, we can change the tariffs to match the supply. So and this start to have a discussion in the literature about the demand response, how the customer has to be response to the supply in very smart way. By the way, you save yourself money. You provide more green energy to your system, and also you save your resources, the oil and gas as well. And here there is several books talking about how to understand the electrical peak, how we can understand the customer habits, and then we can work to have the best mix of energy. My talk, as I said, is about the generation. The generation also, when we start to talk about the generation, we always think about the generation. We don't start from level zero. We start from the existing electrical grid. So well, we cannot actually go to the government today and we said, okay, your gas turbines are polluting the environment, so cancel your gas turbines. We cannot do that. We have always to think about the expansion of the power. So what I am talking here about is generation expansion of the planning. So how we can do the planning by to have extension of the generation by considering renewable energy in the same context. Generation expansion planning is also very specific topics in generation. Let's talk about generator technologies, which would you like to add it to the network, and also you talk about the size of each plant and the location and timing to install them. So it's a specific type of the generation is to talk about the generation expansion planning. Just to give you an idea about how you deal with the generations. For example, the operators he has generator excitation control. He has to work in milliseconds. I mean, he has to monitor in millisecond the excitation of the control. In some occasions, you can go to minutes to hours when you are talking about economic dispatch. So the operators in the control system, he has to monitor every hour. He has to monitor, and in some occasions also hours and days. What we are talking about is the planning for years. For example, also the investment in power plants is costly. You cannot, for example, say every year I will build a power plant. No, when you start to build a plan, when you start your planning process for the power plants, you have to think about 20 years, 30 years, because you will spend a lot of money, and also you need to be sure that your investment is worth it. So what we are talking about here is about renewable energy in generation perspective. The main reason in the modern societies or modern or developed countries to consider renewable energy is the environmental concern. But also environmental concerns led to add the technical and economic and social dimension to the whole process. For example, we cannot invest in renewable energy and we know exactly that it will damage our electrical grid, or it will be costly. So for example, if I spend 1 million Bahrain dinar to have 100 megawatts, and I can build a gas turbine by the same amount for 1,000 megawatt, for example. So it becomes more complicated in technical, economic, and social as we talk about dimensions. My studies, or even my papers, I always suggest that the electrical demand has to be not just about the size and locations, but also we have to link all these aspects to the sustainable growth of the country. How we can do that? Sustainability is more than a theme you can just put all the things on it. Sustainability is an absolute theory, which is like a justice. So every society or even every country is actually redefined to match their own needs, and also to meet the conflict objective within the sustainability. So the main three pillars in sustainability is the environmental and economic and social. And here in these pillars, how you can compromise between them. So if you for example you focus about environmental and you damage other pillars, so it is based on three pillars. So it's an engineering. If we actually look at from the engineering perspective, it's engineering a problem. How we can actually meet all these objectives together, while in some occasions these objectives are conflict each other. And this is actually one of the things, if we talk about Bahrain here, if we have renewable energy and we have social and technical and economic and environmental challenges, how we can actually work on that, how we can see and connect the economic and environmental and social criteria for decision making to rank these technologies. Which one of these technology or which ranking of these technology? For example, if we say, okay, PV, it could be good in technical, suitable to suit the technical, but it's not good in economic, but it's good in environmental and good in social. So how we can rank them, evaluate these renewable technology for Bahrain, so we can tell the government, okay, if you want to have sustainable growth for electrical grid, go for wind technology, invest more. And you can also advise the customers to also to invest more in these technologies. So the way I define the sustainable generation expansion is a dynamic process. So it's not a static, it's a dynamic process to identify the most sustainable investment in power generation, along with the selection of technology and location to supply demand. And this is the most important thing, by balancing and trading off the environmental, economic, and technical and social goals for the country. So, sorry, there is no correct answer here. There is, you look between these dimensions, economic, technical, environmental, and social, and you see which one of these technology is matching the most of the goals or the most objectives, the most conflicted objective. And it is essential also to think renewable energy is not enough. It needs to be sustainable. So, for example, if you invest in renewable in solar, and solar will damage your economy and you damage your social habits of your customer, this technology is not sustainable at all. So when you talk about sustainability, you have to talk about the main pillars of sustainability, and you don't want to damage your grid as well. So you have to consider different aspects, and there are so many ways to study the sustainability. The straightforward ways, the conventional way is for studying the feasibility is techno-economic studies, which based on optimizations, and it's actually the oldest way of doing the planning for electrical generation. What I would like just here to talk about is the modern way, is the more actually modern and also enthusiastic way of doing of finding the sustainability. Here we have something we call the alternative models. It's simply that they are not classified under the umbrella of optimization models. So these models is cover the econometrics. So people who has knowledge in economy, they know econometric modeling. So you can use econometric modeling for doing to study the economy, and then you can see the cost of the environmental and to see the other factors. And you have also cost benefit analysis. The most also known the technology approach is life cycle assessment. So you talk every technology and you see the footprint for every technology, and then you can evaluate. But it's based on mostly the environmental dimension and also the cost benefits analysis. System dynamics and agent-based dynamics also very modern, and the publications in that is very interesting. The one which suits Bahrain, in my view, and also it's very important to consider is multi-criteria analysis. Multi-criteria analysis is very you can there establish the goals and the objectives, and then you can use the expert judgment as well, the literature, to find the solutions for your problem. Why I think it's very essential to study and to consider these alternative models? Because it's more flexible, and that's what you need actually with the sustainability. You don't want to have a rigid, a complicated way, because sustainability is as I said, it's not a rigid idea. It's more, it's like a theory or like a concept, let's say, like justice, for example. Justice, everybody has his own way of understanding justice. What is, for example, the legal justice in Bahrain is different than in France, so, and it's different than UK. So every country has its own culture or own priorities to define their. And the same things for Bahrain. We have to think to consider as much as we can from the sustainability theme. In my work, and I just would like to share it with you, just to it's a published work, so you can also, I can refer to the paper. In my work, I did 72 response from the questionnaires for the experts, and I found the quantitative data in the literature, and I work on technical and social and economic and environmental, and I found the criteria, sub-criteria, and I do all the, I try to cover as much as I can from the sustainability theme. I found for in my result that wind turbine, its weight 35.2, so it could contribute to the most sustainable growth for the electrical grid. And there are several studies for the wind turbines for Bahrain, especially for offshore application, and it's found it's very feasible, even it's to invest on it. And the second is BV, 32.5. And also here we can see the biogas with 16.5. So when you go here also, we can see the breakdown of every technology. You can see here for the BV, we can find for the BV we can find the most thing covered here, and is the social dimension. And here we can see, for example, here we go technical, economic, and environmental and social. We can see here in the BV, it has more social benefits than others. Wind turbines, you can see it has less social impact, but it's good inside of economic indicators. And we can see here how we can break down every technology. What I mean here is not just we invest in wind turbine and we overlook the other technology. No, I mean here, if we like to invest, so it's better to put a lot of amounts for wind, firstly, and also the government can actually initiate some of the policies, which is or initiatives to encourage the private sector to be more involved in wind technology. And then the priority will be for the BV, and after the BV, the concentrated solar power, and the last thing is the biogas. And we also, the policymakers here can see that if he is facing the technical difficulty, so he can go, for example, with the wind turbine, so it's much better, or biogas. And if he has economic difficulty, so it's more to go with the wind turbine because it has more, and the second BV. If he want to solve the environmental impact and to have much better environmental, also he can go with the wind. The social is with the BV. If you want to create more job creations, work more about the social dimension. What I did also, I proposed different scenarios for the policymakers. So as I said, sustainability is not straightforward. It's based on your priority now for the. In my results show the wind turbines ranked number 1, PV 2, CSP 3, biogas 4. If the policymakers are concerned about the technical, the reliability of the network, so you can go first with the wind turbine, second for the biogas, and then with the PV and CSP. He is facing economic difficulty. He go with this option. The environmental, this option. The social with the PV and CSP, and then wind turbine become number 3. So every 5 years or 3 years, the policymakers can also evaluate their priorities for investing in renewable energy. We can see here, for example, if we think about employment creation, which is, if it is an issue and it's an urgent issue, so you can see how PV could be a very powerful tool to create jobs, and that's because it's more associated for the generation and also for the distribution. If we go here for social adaptability, the way the customer can manage or even change his habit. So when even BV, it seems to be better than the others. And you can see social benefits, how it will impact to the education, to the culture. We can see wind has more impact on that. So it's just to consider these application, and what I try to present here is how Bahrain is progress, and how our work in sustainability could contribute to the more sustainable power systems. And what I would like just here to put some recommendation. I think we need to set more ambitious strategies in the country for renewable energy, because the announced targets are very limited. We need also to work to think about sustainability, not just about meeting the target, but also to meet the sustainable theme of these targets. The second thing, also, the entity has to allocate some budget. Also, one of the very important things is that since the power plants in Bahrain is based on the private sector, we have also to encourage the private sector to have a more competitive electricity market, which would lead actually to diversify the energy mix in the country, and also to increase the share of renewable energy. My analysis or my study show that renewable technology could be more effective than other in tackling specific challenges. So if we are talking about sustainability, we don't say all renewable energy is covering the sustainability. It has to look about to investigate every technology and to see how it match the government or the country context, difficulty, challenges, and also opportunities. The last point is the study also brought greater insight to the choices open for the government in implementing different renewable technology, and how it could be contribute to the sustainable growth of Bahrain electrical grid. And this is also essential here to work with the government, to involve the private sectors, and actually it's a start from the universities and research to lead the renewable applications, and to have an economy based on knowledge economy, which is the part of the vision of Bahrain 2030. I think that's what I have for today. I will be happy to listen to your comments or question, and I will be definitely happy to answer it. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah. That was very beneficial. The floor is open. If anybody have any questions, they can post either in the chat or Q&A. I think all the attendees can type questions in the Q&A if there are any questions. Yeah. Martin.
I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Al-Abbasi, for the conference. I must excuse today we have the planning was a little bit short notice on one side, and then the problem is we have our students are following lectures with different partner universities at the same time have a program in the week. And for Bahrain, the slot 12 to 2 Bahrain time was free, but our students are currently following until end of April courses in Ireland with an Irish partner, where they have to, it's compulsory for them, so they have to participate. So they asked, I got quite a lot of messages. They were very interested in the conference. So I think the conference is recorded. So so you post it on Moodle, and they will certainly watch it. And if there's a possibility, if they have questions, they can maybe ask them, and you transfer them to Mr. Alabasi. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's yeah.
I will collate all the questions from the French students, and maybe after 2-3 days, I will email you, Mr. Abdullah, all the there might be some queries from our French students for today.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that, but it's just because I don't know if there are some Bahraini students participating also, probably. So that's just to excuse the absence of the. It is a very interesting topic, obviously, for the French. And I'm German, so in Germany it is also a huge topic. Mr. Al-Basi, you probably know about it. Germany had a big decided on a big energy transfer after 2011, and to go on renewable energy, because Germany was mainly based on not so much nuclear power, but on coal, black coal and lignite, especially in East Germany, and that is extremely polluting. And until very recently, there was a majority. If you go, for example, Poland has still 75% of the energy is still from lignite and coal today. And France, it's a bit different, invested much more on nuclear power in the past. So 75% of the energy in France still comes from nuclear power, but the nuclear power plants will come to the end of their cycle. And I don't think, for the moment it's working, but I don't think the French government will eternally then renew if there are renovations to be done, renewing the plants, that will have also a problem of acceptability. In Germany, they decided in 2011, they decided to move out of the nuclear power. Actually, the last plants will be closed down in 2022. And at the same time, they want to move out of coal and lignite power. So that's a bit tough, yeah, because they were far away. But now it's 40% renewable energy. I had a question. What is the total percentage of renewable energy now in the Bahraini electric energy production?
Yes, this is a very important question, and now we have around 8 megawatts from solar, and that's what we have. We have 2 megawatts from wind. So totally, let's say we have 10 megawatt totally now. There are now also a power plant with 100 megawatts. The total installed capacity of Bahrain is 4,000 megawatts.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking about 10 megawatts out, what is available now.
Yeah.
So we will have 100 megawatts, definitely. This is when we are talking about the generation side. In distribution side, we have some connections, but and it's a promising connections. But until now, as I said, the plan we are late in implementing renewable energy. We start just to have the action plan in 2017. So it's not significant, and also it's, as you know, that the government investment in renewable energy required high capital expenditure, and policymakers prefer at that time maybe to invest more in gas turbines, because gas is available in the country and it will be much cheaper. And
is that the main resource for the production of energy today, the gas?
Yes, gas, and we have gas turbines and steam turbines.
Yeah, okay, steam turbines.
We're connected to the gas. So.
Germany is also, if you take the German example, they are also progressing on the gas side, because you cannot go out of nuclear energy plus coal energy and only say you only have renewable. But I think renewable in about 5 years ago was only 10% of the total energy production, and now it's 40%. So just to show you that if there is, and there was before, there was for many years, there was no real pushing and no real public policy for it. Now there's a strong policy. So just to give you hope, if you you can quite quickly, if you want it, you can change. Yeah, if there's a policy. Yeah.
I think Saudi has a very ambitious vision about that. They are putting a lot of investment. And in their vision in 2030, they will have, I think, more than 40% to be from renewable energy. Yeah, they have. And I know, for example, in Germany also, they invest a lot of money also in waste to energy.
Yep.
And now they are actually buying waste from another countries in Europe. So you see how the waste becomes more valuable than before. People just to throw the things, but you can produce energy of that, and it's a valuable source of energy. But for example, in Bahrain, we are facing problems of segregation of the waste. Because in Europe, and especially I lived in the UK for more than 5 years, you have a segregation since the collections of the waste. So it's much easier to send it to the power plants to produce energy. But in Bahrain, because they have private companies and they have a contract, long contract. It seems to be complicated, but while I see it is a straightforward problem, we can sort it out easily. But I think it's part of our role now in education and research institute to encourage this type of research and also practices to be available in a practical life. I mean, we hope that we can achieve as much as we expect.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are possibilities. I think also in Germany, for example, they hadn't thought of the offshore, for example, for the wind, or for sun. Yeah, and I think you have maybe offshore possibilities around Bahrain. Yeah, so. Same in Germany now, they're thinking of it. Yeah, for a long time they were saying, "Oh, nothing in the sea. We don't want any wind, but now it's getting accepted. It can change quite quickly. At the moment in France, they are investing a lot. They are pushing a lot the households. This year there's a very strong politics coming up to give money. I will, in my place, profit from it and install PV photovoltaic on the roof. And private households, so state gives money to private households to help them to buy photovoltaic production. And that's in France this year. They said they're quite heavily pushing, because we have quite a lot of quite good sun, not as much as in Bahrain, but we have still quite long periods of sun.
Yes. Another factor also in Europe, the electricity tariff is relatively high.
Yeah.
And Bahrain is low. And for example, here is not feasible for Bahrainis, because they are getting the tariff is subsidized by the government. So for non-Bahrainis, it's not subsidized. So it's good now in Bahrain. The non-Bahrainis, they are actually advised to invest in renewable energy to the PV for the household, because the cost of the electricity now it becomes high for them. So he can invest in that. So one of the challenges actually is the tariff, and we cannot actually ask the government to remove the subsidies. So we will have a political issue. So it's very complicated. In the way implementing renewable energy is supposed to be straightforward, but if you see the social context, the political context, it's not straightforward. You have to look in different dimensions to find a feasible application. That now with what we see with the advancement of the solar technology, now we are talking Bahrain now, the electricity, it's cost us the tariff at 29 fils. In Saudi now, by solar, it will be 9 fils.
Wow.
So imagine. So the advancement of the technology, and it's announced now in Saudi that it will be 9 fils for the kilowatt hour, while in Bahrain it's 29 fils, the conventional. So the PV in Saudi becomes cheaper than the gas generation in Bahrain. So there are a lot of opportunities, and we are actually looking forward for the new technologies, the advancement of these technologies, the improvement of these technologies. Even the efficiency now in the PV is going very fast now. In University of Saudi, we have advanced institution. We are working in something called a nano PV. So we are working to restructuring the material of the PV to be also environmental friendly, and also we increase the efficiency. So one of the issue of the PV is not totally green, because when it's finished their own life cycle, you have to consider the carbon footprint of it, and to actually redesign it to be totally organic and green, and then you increase the efficiency, that it will be the best solutions ever. So there are a lot of institutions now work to develop these technologies and working to have, and I hope that also here in Bahrain, we actually start to consider the R&D, the research and development for the practical applications, which will be beneficial for Bahrain and for the region as well.
Yeah. Well, Bahrain Polytechnic is there also.
Yes,
to help you.
Yeah, that's what we are looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so that was registered also. That's good also for our students. Okay. Perfect. For me, it's fine. I have to rush off to another. Well, even if I'm at home, because we are locked down in France again with the COVID, so I will have to leave you to another meeting.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye. And
Bye.
thank you, Mr. Alabasi. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. If you have any questions, please, if you need any data, France or Germany, don't hesitate to get back to Adel, and he can ask me. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.
Okay. I think one of the challenges that you have been talking about is, you just said it's getting quite cheaper. The PV technology, I think it's been for 3-4 years now that it's technology of choice. It's becoming cheaper than a gas generation or even coal, and in some situation even cheaper than nuclear, which is traditionally the cheapest source of electricity. But I think in Bahrain we have an issue of scarcity of land. If Saudi will go for PV, maybe their power plant will be bigger than Bahrain. This is what usually happens. When they build an airport, it's bigger than Bahrain. When they do a PV, it's bigger than Bahrain. So what do you think? What do you think? We need to do something. We need to have some energy mix. We can't stay at 99.9 coming from gas. The challenge is very complicated, especially when the prices are going so low that it is feasible for us to do it. Yeah. What do you think is the next step for Bahrain to implement attractive renewable energies?
Yes, I think what you said about the land availability is true, and now we have several ways of technologies. Also, we have offshore PV, for example. We can use the offshore technology PV to be on the sea, and it will be good actually. We will decrease the losses because we can use the sea water to actually reduce the heat, to reduce the. And one of the applications is talking about the vertical PVs, and there are several applications that you don't have to have a larger area to implement the solar technology. So with the challenges, smart solutions comes normally. So what I think is the first thing in Bahrain is to start to build R&D teams, and they are working for solutions. We have to stop to rely on international applications, because what I found, renewable technology is more associated to the government challenges. It's more associated with the government characteristics, also the way of the considering the new technologies. For example, if we can see in Jordan, they don't have a very good they don't have strong economy like us, but they are succeed now in implementing PV and also solar, concentrated solar, because they found a right policies to attract the investors. So, for example, if we said, okay, we need 100 megawatts to make to do it in offshore, for example, or also we use some of the abandoned area. For example, now for 100 megawatts, they are using landfill. It's not used actually. So we have to think about more smart solutions. One of the solutions, for example, is offshore. The second solution also, we are part of GCC countries, and we have interconnections between us. We can have the interconnections also, and we have GCC electrical authority, which every country of GCC are representative there. And now the chairman of these this authority is Bahrain, and we can invest, for example, in Saudi to use their lands, and we connect it to Bahrain, and it will be cheaper for us. And we have to look about win-win situations. We have to think out of the box and to find more smart and innovative solutions. Solutions are there, but we have to look at for them. As I told you, we have agreement with the GCC countries, so we can invest this agreement in very smart way. We have also to work to attract the private sector to be more involvement in that. We have offshore technologies. Seas are available, especially if you see the northern side of Bahrain. You can see it's a huge area, and it's a good place for wind applications, and it's actually highlighted by the Wind Atlas, which is also launched by the Sustainable Energy Unit.
Okay, so is that in public domain, the Wind Atlas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can find it. I think I have it here with me if you like it. I have hard copy and soft copy, but soft copy you can find it in the website.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
We have a student commenting, and he's saying that since the solar system needs for very big areas to produce electricity, I think one of the best ways to get renewable energy is to encourage people to start using PV on their houses.
Yeah.
So I think that is a step that the government has already taken by changing all the meters in our houses and businesses. Is that related in some way?
Yes, but the problem of even this step, which is it's a good step, that's even the private sector, when you go to ask them, okay, I am Bahraini, I have a subsidized bill, so he will directly say to you, it's not feasible for you, because you are paying 3 fills per unit, then 9 fills, then 16 fills. While for non-Bahrainis, it's attractive, because PV installing PVs is more. It also has environmental benefit, but it has to also to be competitive to the conventional way. Otherwise, it will be not attractive. People will say, okay, it's much cheaper for me to take electricity from the government. Why I have to install a PV in my house, which will be costly, and then I will not have any benefit. So. Smart metering, or what we call net metering, is a good approach. But what I hope from the units or the authority, and we have a discussion with them in DERASAT that we have to start to have what we call the feed-in tariff.
Feed-in tariffs, yeah.
Yeah, and by implementing feed-in tariff, I think it will be much attractive for the customers to be involved. I can add to this also suggestion, which is also valid. The governmental and also one of the governmental buildings has to be covered by the solar, and it has to be compulsory by regulations. One of the initiatives of the Bahrain Renewable Action Plan is to have a percentage for the private developers. For example, we are talking about Diyar Muharraq, Amwaj, Durrat al-Bahrain, all these developers, there will be a regulation for them that you have a 30% from consumptions, or it has to be from renewable energy. So it's part of as part of their projects, they have to include solar or wind to cover the consumption. So by doing that, you are actually forcing the private sector to invest. And it is initiative written and it's an action plan, but it's not implemented until now. We hope that especially the oil companies, banks, the business sectors in Bahrain, we have to impose a regulation which can encourage them, or even in sometimes force them.
Yeah, I always tell my students that there is only two ways of implementing any technology. One is by making it economically attractive, so you would choose it, or you make it legally binding, like forcing it by law. So even if it is more expensive, people will have to use it, depending on the like what you're saying, like selectively for banks and
yes,
or property developers. We have a question. It could work if the Bahraini has a second property, since the support is only for the main family house, or if they are not married, right? So I think the subsidy is selective as well. It's I think for one household per Bahraini, I think.
yes, but honestly, if we see the housing request by the government, we will find the majority of Bahrainis have one house only. I mean percentage-wise, percentage-wise. So we are talking about the vast majority, and as I told Martin, it's not also wise to tell the government, okay, remove the subsidy. It will be also a catastrophe for the people. It will be very difficult for the people. So we need to find something smart. I mean, the one we are thinking about is feed-in tariff. It will encourage the household and even the private sector to invest. As you mentioned, also we have to impose regulations, and that's also, it's a long process, but it's supposed to be covered. Also, the most important things that we miss Bahrain, and we have now a proposal for the electricity and authority, DERASAT, sending a proposal for them. We need to understand the consumptions of Bahrain. I mean, we need to understand it. We can see, for example, we need to see where it is the peak per day. So based on that, we can suggest several technologies. We can also redesign the tariff. For example, it will be three fills in the morning and at the night, but in the afternoon it will be 16 fills.
I know yourself and my background both are like, you know, coming from UK education system, so we know more about how things work in UK. What do we have in Bahrain, which is equivalent of National Grid, the authority that gives are we having pricing at spots or spot pricing in Bahrain?
No. What we have, we have announced announced prices. For example, for Bahrainis with the subsidized 3 fils for the first.
No, I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm talking about the pricing between the national grid and the generators.
Yes, we have. Okay. We have Citra and Rufaa. It's owned by the government, so we cannot know. It's owned by the government, but it's not covering even 20% of the total supply. The announced generation price it is 22 fils from the power generation. The announced one, and the 7 fils is coming from the transmission and distribution.
Okay.
But the breakdown of this tariff, it's a little bit complicated because 22 fils, because also government are are supporting these private power plants by the gas. So they give them the gas also cheaper than the international market.
Okay.
So the government subsidize the gas for them and subsidize the electricity for us.
Yeah.
So you imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the announced price 22 fils.
Okay. So that is, I think, the wholesale for probably for a few years or something.
Yes, actually, the contract is now for more than 25 years. So
okay.
we are.
Because this makes a very big difference in consumption as well. When you have spot pricing for daily consumption of the whole country, you can ask for more expensive sources of energy to be implemented in the peak times.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So in those times, maybe having small scale solar panels on houses makes sense.
Yes.
You know, because the price will not be at 22 fils or 9 fils or 10 fils. At that time of peak, maybe it will be higher because of the supply and demand at that time.
Yes. I think liberalize the market, like what's now suggested, and it's actually implemented in Oman. They have like a daily price for the electricity. The electricity company, the governmental company, they have like a bidding for every day.
Okay.
So the cheaper price, it will be taken for this day daily. It's like a wholesale. It's like a market.
Yeah,
it's a very competitive market. So then you will allow the private sector to actually to build their own power plants, to invest, and also you can say, for example, I will take solar power by this amount of kilowatts, and I will give you this amount for kilowatt hour. So you can also incentivize the renewable energy technology by doing that. There are another applications used in Canada, for example. They have different approaches. Every country is building their own strategy based on their need. But the first step, what we have to do is to understand the demand. Yeah. We don't understand, until now in Bahrain, we don't understand the demand. Okay, we know the peak, but how's the daily peak? When in daily consumptions, where's the peak? Okay, how we can manage it? How we can manage the industrial, the sectors. So by understanding the demand, we can then suggest or even implement a very effective policies.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we used to hear a lot in the newspapers during summer is that like yesterday the peak demand was at 3 p.m. With that much megawatt being used in Bahrain. So I think EWA will have some sort of, understanding of the demand curve.
Yeah, well, it is published, but what I mean, the one published is from the transmission. He just looked about about generation and
Yeah.
distribution.
Yeah.
He has the big picture.
Yes.
When you go on the distribution, we know we want to know exactly what's going on there. I mean that's what we missing. Why, but while the supply and demand daily, we can know it, but we need to understand the customer habits. I mean, okay, the customer habits. Okay, what it could be, the policy, what which can be more sustainable for our applications. So this is what's missing. So before you, for example, in some countries, I think in Mexico, they start to say, okay, anyone has you cannot drive your car for 7 days. You have to drive your car for 5 days because they are working about air quality and so what people used to do, they buy another car.
Oh yeah, yeah. I sorry, but I heard the same thing in China when they had odd and even numbers of the cars.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
like every day, one day was for even numbers and the other day was for odd numbers. And people started to buy two cars with two number plates. One is even, one is
Yes. So
yeah.
so and the problem that the old car, one of them, it's not efficient at all. I mean, it's polluting the environment
Yeah, yeah.
as much more than. So this policy, when you hear it, it's nice, but when you implement it for the people like to find the loopholes.
Yeah.
So you have to consider it very well. For example, in Brazil also, and in Brazil, they said you cannot actually drive to the mall. You have to take the you have to have buses from your houses to the malls. So people, what they used to, they drive to the parking spot and then they take buses, which is they're driving much more than they need.
Just go more than the route from house to the mall.
Yes, yes, yes. So the policy is okay. The intention is good.
Yeah.
The application of it is not environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
So when we think about policies, we have to think about human as human. We are not machines. We like
Exactly.
to cross some lines sometimes.
We have a question. What is it? Wait a second. From Sheikh Khalid Al Khalifa. What about using sea waves for power since we are an island? Is it considered for tidal energy or wave energy?
Yes, wave energy. I have experience with it. There is an investor came to EWA in 2005, and he claimed at that time that I can produce a good power from wave. And when he did his feasibility study, I don't remember 2005 or before. When he did his feasibility study, he found it is not that feasible. Second thing, also, if we look to the Bahrain Renewable Action Plan, it's mentioned the wave and other technology, thermal, for example. He said at that time, Bahrain, we don't have to consider this technology because either is not feasible or there is no study to support it in Bahrain. So the electrical grid operators, they are very sensitive also to the not mature technology or even which is not tested in the region technology. So in the action plan they mentioned, they are either is not feasible or is not tested in even in academic level. So before we invest or before we attract, we need to. Well, and there's one of very essential indicator when we do the planning for renewable energy is to look to the maturity of the market itself. So how mature is this technology to be connected to our national grid? Because our national grid is also, they are more concerned about stability of the grid, about also the reliability of the grid. For example, I can tell you the PV. It has we have, you know, I know that you are coming from mechanical side. So in electricity, we have electrical and mechanical inertia when we produce the generation, electrical generation to the grid. With the PV, we don't have inertia. We don't have mechanical inertia. So the system will be weaker than the one which is based in, for example, wind turbines or even the gas turbines, because there is mechanical inertia which add to more reliable system. So the system will be very, very weak. So because of that, nobody, the expert always say, we are always thinking about energy mix. We don't say just solar, just wind. We have to have a mix of energy. This mix of energy actually it's actually will add to your security. For example, if you have blackout from the gas, you have wind and solar. If you don't have wind, you have gas and PV. So it will add more to your security perspective of your grid. So even you have to look to the electrical grid from the strategic point of view, a security point of view. So you have to have secure, reliable, and stable electrical grid.
Yeah, and I think one of the, I mean, everything has a positive and negative side. Yeah. So waves energy or tidal energy. First of all, I think we have to look at how tides are working in the Gulf, in the Arabian Gulf, because from my understanding, the North Sea, for example, the tide, the height difference in the North Sea it's quite big.
Yes.
The difference between the low tide and high tide is huge, and it's worth it to work on tidal energy in that in some seas. Some seas, the tidal change is not much.
Yes.
I think Bahrain is one of the areas where the low tide and the high tides difference in the height is not enough for big projects.
Yeah,
and also a lot of work is being done, I think, on the sea currents to utilize the currents of the sea to move some sort of a propeller or like an electricity generator. And again, these currents are the source of nutrition for different types of fish in some places and other places. So a lot of these technologies, we don't know enough. We don't know enough of what is the effect of these things in the long term. So we might be solving one problem by having 2-3 more. Or not, or maybe it's fine, but it needs a good study and research on these things. We have a question. Wait a second. Just saw something. Oh yeah. The question is it possible to add machine that generates tides? Then, yes, we can, but then what's the point?
What the point? Yes.
Yeah. So one Simpsons one day said that you have to listen to laws of thermodynamics in my house. So yeah, you can do whatever you want to do, but you can't defy the laws of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
To use the tidal energy in Gulf region, yes, we want something that occurs. That's a continuation of the same question. We want something that occurs naturally, and then we harness that energy into electricity or something else. Okay, I just have one last question or a point to talk about, and this is coming from me. What do you think about application of solar collectors or heat collectors from solar energy? something that we have seen a lot when we travel, something which is, you know, like a water heater that is heated by uh, the sun. Is there any potential? Why don't we see these sort of small scale technologies being used in the Gulf region?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, there are some applications. The problem, these applications are very costly. For example, if we're talking about water heaters, for example, you can buy now the conventional electricity, which is 70 PD, while the one which is based on solar, it's cost 500 PD. So also more is related to the technology itself and the electricity itself. While the electricity is cheap, all the application associated with this technology, with the electricity, it will be cheaper than other applications. I have an opinion that some of these applications, as you said, I have, for example, heaters, water heaters, solar light applications, and it's supposed to be very attractive and even competitively good to be considered in some locations. It required also a professional expertise to consider it, since of the architecture perspective. This is one issue. Second issue, if the electricity is now cheap, it will be not attractive as much as we expect, because people always will say, okay, this is costly, what's the benefits? The third things also, what I noticed also here in Bahrain, is that they're always concerned about reliability. And they say, oh, we don't test it, we don't know it. It's also more about the culture and the mindset. People are afraid from the new things. The customers always look to trust the opinions of others and what is acceptable culturally and what people used to do, and that actually make the things not attractive to the private sector to bring these technologies. While if people actually looking for these technologies and considering them, I think it will be more available in the markets. I know, for example, some vendors here in Bahrain, they have some of the applications, but it's really costly because the numbers of people requesting these are very limited. So it's not attractive for the private sector to invest, and even for the people, because they don't use to have. So some of the they will say, okay, when I don't have solar at night, I will not have hot water. It's a problem for him. But there are, I think, for example, in my master thesis, I work for the water pumps by using solar and wind for Hawar Island. And I use an actual reading. Actual reading of the consumptions of these water pumps, and I prove in my modeling that it's much cheaper to go with solar than the local grid there, which is based on diesel. Because it's not connected to the national grid. It's based on in diesel generation. And imagine the electricity and water authority every week they have to take a big gas tank to fill in the gas power plants there. While I use it for small application, which is water pumps, because they have water desalination power plant, water there, and they have different water pumps. So and they have to connect it to the diesel. So there are several applications we can invest on. But I think if I want to summarize it, that it's not attractive for the people. They don't have experience with it. It's also the cost of the electricity is much cheap, not attractive for them, and also is not attractive for the vendors to be available.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Another question coming in. They're asking about floating PV systems.
Yes.
What do you think about them? What is it a good idea for Bahrain to have floating PV?
Yes, I think it's a good idea. One of the things that it has to be considered in as I told you during my presentation that if we have offshore PV, one of the things which is affecting the efficiency of the PV is the heat, because solar radiations is also producing heat. So the heat normally it's the temperature of the PV is reducing the efficiency. While you have it while you have it in the front of the sea, there will be reducing of the temperature because of the heat transfer between the PV and the water. So there are some benefits. Some of the disadvantages that we have, that normally we have accumulated salt on the solars, so we have to think also about the corrosions of the and we have to think also in the materials selections. I think it's feasible. I think it's worth it to have a pilot scheme for the power offshore PV, and it will be also easily to be connected to the grid. And I think it is feasible, and we have to invest on this technology.
Yeah, I think it is. It will not be for 2.7 cents per kilowatt.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it will be something worth looking into,
Yes.
especially for Bahrain application. But I really like the idea of, using the lands from Saudi and have a more investment in Saudi for the GCC interconnection scheme. Yeah, that will be really a good one. Yeah. There is a plant in Dur for solar and 2 wind turbines. Have you heard about them?
Yes, actually, I was the team.
Yeah. So they're saying, is it working?
Yes. Yes, it's working and it's connected to the grid, and it is 5 megawatts, 2.5 from the solar and 2.5 from the wind.
Okay.
We don't have an issue with the PV, but we have a technical issue with the wind because the area is not actually good for the wind production.
Okay.
And the reason why the reason of selecting this area because it's owned by EWA, so it will be much cheaper for them, and they call it the pilot power project. So it's not what we mean by pilot. Before we invest for 100, we start with the pilot project to see the reliability, the impact of the grid, and then we can have a better understanding of the technology on our national grid. So the solar is definitely there working, and I think there are some difficulty with the wind turbines, but overall it's a pilot project.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully things become more positive in this, and we look for more renewable energy in our mix soon, hopefully. Okay. And thank you very much. I think we have answered all the questions from the attendees. Yeah, I'm just checking. So yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah. That was a real honor and pleasure to have you on. I would like to see you more often, being involved more with us to tell our students about what is going on. And thanks to you and DERASAT for all the hard work and, real technical R&D stuff that we hear about, and now we are seeing. That's really exciting for all of us. There's this connection of the cycle that we see there is potential around Bahrain. But then we say, okay, what is really happening? We don't know what is really happening, and we need more of these sessions to connect, the students and general public with the knowledge of what is exactly going on in many. There's a lot of great work going on around in Bahrain, but we need to have more of these sessions to understand it better. So thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah, and thank you to all the attendees and their great questions. Thanks for the organizing and spreading the word to everyone. As I said, I will email you after a day or two. If there are some questions from the French students. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with you, and all the best, inshallah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank
All right. Thank you.